All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we've got a really surprising stack of source material to get into. It's all rooted in, relationship, self-help, personal healing. Most of it comes from the 555 Relationship podcast.
Right, hosted by author Blazon Faya. And it's all about navigating modern relationships, ending what they call the gender wars, and really promoting accountability.
Deeply personal, emotional stuff.
Exactly.
But, and this is the twist that makes it a real deep dive smack in the middle of all that, they just pivot. They start talking about a huge public interest question,
Yeah.
that rumored $2,000 government payment.
It's such a fascinating crossover, and I think it reveals something really true about right now, the impulse to believe in a quick fix.
Whether it's for your love life or your bank account.
Precisely. It's a common trap. So our mission here is to show you how the same critical thinking you'd use to, say, spot a toxic partner is what you need to avoid financial misinformation. We're separating the healing philosophy from the hard economic facts.
Okay, so let's set the scene first. What is this core source, the 555 podcast?
Well, their whole mission is promoting healthy relationships. And a big part of that is creating this space for, frank discussion without making these huge generalizations.
Right, and the host, Blazon Faya, she has this foundational philosophy. It's built on putting a higher power first, loving yourself, and a kind of live and let live mindset.
And a key part of her teaching is that not everyone has to be in a romantic relationship. But if you want to be, you first have to heal your own wounds. Personal accountability is everything.
And she's very skeptical about people. She tells listeners, don't label all men or all women based on a few bad experiences. Instead, you have to vet them.
Right, against those 4 pillars she always talks about. Respect, honest communication, loyalty, and reciprocation.
That's the framework.
It is. It's the framework for figuring out who deserves to be in your life. And she goes deep on all sorts of topics like soul ties.
What are those exactly?
They define them as these restrictive emotional connections that kind of trap you in the past. And then there's more practical stuff, like how to spot what she calls a blessing blocker.
A blessing blocker.
Yeah, someone who is actively diminishing you. The whole point is shedding that dead weight so you can move forward.
And that focus on skepticism, on accountability, it seems like that's the perfect setup for them to suddenly pivot to, well, a financial rumor.
It really is, because it shows that financial anxiety and, false hope, they're part of everyone's overall wellness.
Even when you're working on healing trauma, you're still checking your bank account?
Exactly.
So let's drill down on the rumor itself. The $2,000 question. In this public service announcement, they tackle all the buzz about a new stimulus check. And I get it. I mean, $2,000 is a lot of money for most people. It could be a down payment or just breathing room.
Oh, absolutely. The emotional stakes are incredibly high. But okay, let's just cut through the noise. The bottom line they delivered in the source material, it's unequivocal. No, Americans are not currently getting a $2,000 payment or a stimulus check.
And that really needs to be the first and loudest takeaway for you, the listener. But, this rumor didn't just appear out of thin air. So where did it come from? What was the actual proposal?
It started as a proposal from President Trump. It was framed as a tariff dividend.
A tariff dividend.
Yeah, the idea was to take the money generated from trade tariffs and give it back to low and middle income Americans.
That's an interesting concept, tying payments directly to tariff revenue, but an announcement isn't. I mean, it's not a law, right?
Not even close. And that's the key word here, proposal. It was announced, sure, on social media and in statements, but it requires approval from Congress. They hold the power of the purse. They're the ones who have to authorize any spending.
And that's where the idea hits a wall. The friction between the announcement and what's actually possible legally and financially.
Exactly. When you actually look at the numbers, you hit some pretty big roadblocks.
So the funding source is supposed to be these tariffs. Does that math even work?
Well, according to the analysis in the source material, including from experts like the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, no, not even close. The tariff revenues are substantial, but they wouldn't be nearly enough to cover the cost of giving $2,000 to all those people without, massively increasing the national debt.
So if the math is so clearly off, why propose it that way? What's the political thinking there that the source hints at?
Well, it creates immediate public interest, doesn't it? The idea of tangible financial relief. And what's fascinating is how the conversation then pivots away from a direct check.
Right, because the source material mentions that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent suggested this dividend might not be a check at all.
Precisely. The administration started suggesting it could actually be delivered as specific tax cuts next year.
Okay, like what kind of tax cuts?
Things like removing the tax on tips or on overtime pay. And they also mentioned possibly expanding the deductibility for auto loans.
Wow. Okay, so that's a huge distinction. When you hear $2,000 payment, you might actually be getting a collection of tax changes that put money back in your pocket over time.
It's a vastly different mechanism.
And that's completely different from the stimulus checks during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Fundamentally different. Those were authorized by specific acts passed by Congress. There was a legal mandate for the Treasury to send out checks. This current dividend, it has none of that.
And you can really feel the emotional side of this when you hear the podcast co-hosts react to the news. You hear the disappointment. One of them, Reek, he just sighs and says that $2K would have really come in handy.
Yeah, and Nikki, the other co-host, she was already planning her future around it. She says very clearly she was going to use that money for a down payment on a car. And now she's frustrated she has to figure something else out.
That reaction, that immediate hope, it connects right back to their relationship content, doesn't it? It's like looking for an external fix, a new partner to solve loneliness, or a surprise check to solve debt, instead of doing the patient foundational work.
It is. And that's why Blazon Faya's advice is so on point for both topics. She tells her listeners, you have to do your own research before getting your hopes up.
The same diligence for avoiding a blessing blocker applies to avoiding a financial trap.
Exactly.
And that simple statement is really the essential public safety message here. Since there's no official timeline, no application, the warning is to beware of scams.
Yes. Any unofficial text, email, or call asking for your information for this rumored payment is almost certainly a scammer. You have to be skeptical. Any real official information would only come from a verified source like the IRS website.
So what this all means for you is you have to gather facts, check sources, and just not let that hopeful feeling override your critical thinking.
That skill is your shield, whether the rumors about your love life or your bank account.
So after all that, we've gone from, healing trauma all the way to tariff policy. The core takeaway on this financial rumor is pretty clear. The $2,000 payment is a non-legislated proposal. It faces major funding questions.
And if anything does happen, it's far more likely to be in the form of tax changes.
Like no tax on tips, maybe something with auto loans, not a check in the mail.
Right. And it really brings us back to where we started, and it leaves us with a really important question for you to think about. We just analyzed a source that's all about complex emotional work, healing from trauma, escaping toxic cycles.
And yet that same source stops everything to debunk a specific financial rumor. What does that tell us about the modern landscape of, self-help and wellness? It really raises a question. In a world where your financial health and your mental well-being are so closely linked, how often do we mistake a high-profile proposal for a guaranteed outcome? And what is the real emotional cost of that assumption when we find out that quick fix isn't coming?
Think about that. We'll see you on the next Deep Dive.